Hey guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Joseph. In today's video, I'm going to be going over certain small reasons why I think retouching softwares or retouching in itself is an integral part of photography. And the reason why I'm doing that in today's video is because way back when I started photography, like some 5-6 years ago, a lot of the pros at that time considered photographers who were interested or showed interest in retouching their images to be not professional because they are looking to a software to enhance their images. But to me, I felt retouching is still a part of photography because what you're doing essentially is just to improve upon what you have already captured. It's just an added step. So you can by all means focus 99.9% of your attention on set to make sure you're getting the image this exact way you want it. But there are certain things that you can't fix with the camera, with the lighting, with the subject. There are certain things that you just can't do. So you have to resort to a retouching software to help you finish up the image. And again, back in the days of film, when they were dodging and burning the film to develop the images, it was still a retouching process. Actually, let me just go on to Google right now and see what retouch is defined as. So here it says to improve or repair a painting, photograph, or other image by making slight additions or alterations. So the key word here is slight. So you don't need to be overcooking or over processing your images for it to be considered a retouch. Once you're doing something small to enhance, to alter, to change, or to improve or repair, you are retouching an image. So I have a couple of images here that I'm going to go over and show you guys that, well, you can't do some of the things I'm going to do inside your camera, right? By like maybe changing white balance or something of the sort, but it's rather easier to do these things in post or after the fact that you've captured the image. Then you can use a retouching software to further enhance or sometimes even save your images, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is just right click and I'm going to open these series of images, and it's going to be opened inside Camera Raw. So Camera Raw is more or less your first software that you're going to go through before you get into Photoshop because it's a raw processing engine. This is what's going to read the raw data that you've captured, and then you can make your alterations to the raw file before you open it up inside Photoshop, right? So let me first of all consider this first image. So this is an image that I shot whilst I was doing some test shoots. I actually have a video coming on this beauty shoot I have done. So this is like one of the properly exposed versions of the shoot I did with this. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, this is going to be a very good time to subscribe so you don't miss out when I drop that video. All right, so moving on. So this is not my final intention in terms of exposing this image, right? The image here on the left is a properly exposed image because I have my REM light exactly where I want it to be. I have my main light exactly where I want it to be. Even with the expression, everything is on point, right? But when I go back to this image, again, this was one of my test shots. So there is no way or no day that I will shoot an image like this and say I'm actually doing a photo shoot, right? Because this is completely underexposed. Again, this was just a test shot. So this is not a final image. But I just want to show you that you can still salvage images that look like these. Sometimes when you're doing shoots, your flash may not even go off. And that could be an image that you really, really love because you can't get that expression back because it was in the moment when you took that shot. The only thing that happened, which was not your fault, was the fact that your flash did not fire at that time. And maybe it's your favorite, it's a personal thing you're doing and you really want to keep that image. Well, this image was shot with a 5D Mark IV and it has a very good dynamic range. So let's see if we can actually save this image by tweaking the exposure, the contrast, highlights, and maybe a little bit of the temperature to see if we can get it to look usable, to look decent enough for us to start our post-production on. All right. So the first thing obviously that you need to do is to increase your exposure. So I'm going to start doing that by dragging the exposure slider all the way to the right. And you can see, even though we didn't have a lot of light in the image, we are being able to bring back life into the image Again, the intention of this image was not to shoot it underexposed. It was one of my test shots for me to get my lighting right to look like this. All right, so I'm still going to push the exposure up a little bit more. So somewhere around here looks good. And if I zoom in, you can see that we don't have a lot of noise, color noise or any distractions in there. We still can see the texture. Everything looks really good. Even though I've opened the exposure, as you can see at +2, it's still looking really, really good. All right, but I'm not done. The next thing I'm going to do is probably just increase the contrast a little bit, because opening up the exposure is taking away some of the contrast. So I'm just going to add a little bit of contrast to that. I'm also going to go into the shadows and open it up a little bit. I can go all the way and you can see it's not really doing much. And when I zoom in, now we're beginning to see a little bit of noise inside the deep dark shadows. So I don't want that to be too visible. So instead of going all the way to 100, I'll just bring it back down. Somewhere around 25 should look good. I'm going to go into my whites and I'm just going to add a little bit of whites onto the image, just a little bit of that. Maybe even go back to my exposure and then increase it a little bit more. I think somewhere like this looks really good. Now I'm going to go into my temperature. It's looking really, really warm. So I'm just going to cool the image down a little bit so it looks close to the way I shot it, or the way I remember this image to look like. Now bringing the temperature down a little bit is also underexposing the image a tiny bit. So I'm still going to stretch my exposure even more. And I think somewhere like this looks really good. I'm going to increase my clarity just a tiny bit and also add a little bit of dehaze. And now when I press P for before and after, you would think that this image is completely unusable. But if I show you this image, you would think this is how it was intended to be shot. I can even go to like the crop tool and then look for a suitable crop that I'm going to use for Instagram. So maybe something like that. All right, reposition it. And now we have the image in a crop ratio that we like, and it still looks really, really good. So this is even just one of the reasons why I feel retouching softwares are important. As you can see, I've saved this image. So if this image had like a very good expression, if I maybe styled the hair a little bit better, even maybe pose a little bit well, then this could pass for an image. I could retouch this image and post it and you would think it was actually shot like this. But as you can see, again, this is where we started from, right? And then this is where we are. We've been able to save this image. So the next thing I'm going to go to is going to be this image, right? So when I shot this image, again, this one was also shot with the 5D Mark IV, and I generally don't play with my white balance in camera. I'm either shooting at a Kelvin of 5000 constantly, or I just move to auto white balance. All right, so now bringing this image back into post-production. Let's say I'm tired of this warm looking image, right? And I want to cool it down. If I forgot to do it whilst I was shooting, with the retouching software, I can simply just drag the exposure down, and then it's giving me a totally different vibe. So this could be like a mood that I feel will be suitable for this particular image. And because I have a retouching software to do that, it allows me to be more flexible with my images. I can play around, I can experiment, I can even add more life to my images, right? So this is even just one thing that we are looking at. So let's just say maybe even with the warm tone, I even want to warm it up some more. I can just go into the warm side of my white balance, maybe play with the tint a little bit, and just give it another feel. But let's just say maybe I wanted it to still look cool, like maybe it was shot in the evening to give it that cinematic vibe. I could easily just do that. Maybe add a little bit of green and just cool it down just a little bit. This is even just playing with the white balance alone. I can go down and go into, let's say, the color grading tab, right? And inside the midtones, I can now begin to choose colors that I want. So maybe inside the midtones, because I know it's going to affect more of her skin, I can decide to rather warm her skin up, right? Go into the shadows and then go into maybe something like a teal, so that you can see I'm going for like this cinematic teal and orange vibe, right? So I'm color grading the image already. So let me just move this dial around till I find what works. I want to keep it in the cool areas. So I think something like this is going to look good. So in the highlights, I'm really going to add a lot more warmth in there. So something like this. and you can see with the before and after, we've been able to change the mood completely. And this just took a few minutes. You see, all I did was shift the white balance and now just add a little bit of warmth into the midtones, the highlights, and just cool down the shadows, and we have a completely different vibe going on. So this is the before and this is the after. Trying to do this in camera, you might need to gel, you might need to have like more expensive lights on set that you can control and assign to specific things. So for example, the shadow part, you have one light gelled blue, making sure that it's adding this blue tone into your shadows, and then you need another light which is probably daylight balanced or something of the sort, and then you just focus that on your subject's skin. But then you're still going to have a mixture of lights going on, because those lights are going to be crossing paths and you may not have a lot of control as you have here. Again, I have just done these things. If later on I want to change the mood, I can just go back again into the basic tab, and then maybe now I can just decide to warm it up a little bit like this, or maybe even just add a lot of magenta in there. You have a lot of flexibility when you're using retouching softwares. All right, so these two that I have done have completely been done inside of Camera Raw. We're going to be going inside Photoshop really soon, so that we can even experiment more with what you can do with retouching softwares. So now the next image is going to be this one. All right, so let me just zoom out a little bit. And let me just do some basic adjustments here. So maybe just add a little bit of exposure, some contrast. This is not going to be my final edit. I just want to quickly move this image into Photoshop so you guys can see what I want to do next. All right, so I'm gonna add a little bit of dehaze, a little bit of vibrance, and maybe just warm it up as well. And remove some greens in there. And with this image as well, I'm just going to add a bit of exposure, reduce the highlights, open up the shadows. Yeah, maybe make it a little bit warm. All right, and I'm going to open these three inside of Photoshop. All right, so now we're inside Photoshop, and with this software, we have a lot more control. So when we were looking at the Adobe Camera Raw, what we could change a lot was maybe your white balance. You could add like your color grade right there. You can remove noise, lens corrections. You can do all those basic things that you have to do to your raw files before you import them into the retouching software, because at this point you're not really dealing with a lot of the data that you can get out of your raw file, but you still have a lot of depth that you can play with since you're shooting in raw. So when I was shooting this image, I had a vision in mind, right? I wanted us to see the shower head. I wanted us to see the shower on hair, like the water falling on hair. I wanted that wet look. I wanted it to be a part of the shot, right? But there was really nothing I could do about the pipes. So does it mean that because I want to get like a very good image right on set, I have to remove the pipes on set? If I do that, I'm not going to get this pipe working, right? So what I decided to do is, I have a retouching software. I can just shoot this image on set, come back, get rid of it in a few minutes, and I'm actually going to do that for you guys to see and have the image the exact way I envisioned. So retouching softwares are not necessarily for you to over polish or like to really smoothing out your images. It's just supposed to help you get the vision right. It's just supposed to help you get what you are imagining on set right, because the camera can only do so much. Again, the camera is a tool and you're using that tool to bring your vision to life. The retouching software is an extra tool to help bring your vision to life, because we are creatives, we are creating something. So it starts in mind, it goes to the camera to capture that, and then you can come back into your retouching software to enhance it, to hammer down your vision. Let me not waste too much time. I'm going to just zoom in really quickly. And now Photoshop is even getting smarter. So what I can do is I'm going to press S for clone stamp tool, right? And I'll just get rid of, just ping this area out, and also pings the base here out. And I'll just press L for the lasso tool, and I'll just draw around this pipe. Just like that. Go to edit, go to content aware fill, and let me just paint it out of her body, because I don't want it to read the information on her body as part of the tree, right? So I'm just quickly gonna paint that out. and allow it to recalculate. Obviously, when you're doing this yourself, you can spend a lot of time to fine tune it, but this is just a demo. I'm just demonstrating this for you guys to see, right? So I'm going to apply it, press OK, and now we've been able to get rid of that pipe, right? It also created a new layer so that if I just want to make any changes, I can go back and do that. So I'm going to do the same thing to the pipe up here. So I'm going to press S, and I'm just going to clone a little bit. Again, I'm not really taking my time because I just want to quickly show you guys the power of the retouching tool, right? So when you're doing this on your own, you can spend a lot of time to get this properly done. All right. So now I'm going to press L for the lasso tool again, and then just draw around the pipe. Go to edit and come down to content aware fill. Now Photoshop again is going to recalculate. Now I need to paint this out of the shower and out of her body as well. I don't really need to do it, but I just want to make sure it's as precise as possible. So let me just press OK. And you can see in just a few clicks, we've been able to get rid of it. So in my mind, this is close to the vision I wanted. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge everything I've done. If I was actually retouching this, I'll keep all of these on separate layers. But again, this is just a demo. I want you guys to see everything I'm doing. So I'm just merging this so I can move on to the next one. So I want to crop this, right? I'm going to press C for crop tool. And you can see I'm losing the shower, right? So I'm just going to drag this up a little bit. And now I'm losing out on her thighs. I can just bring the crop down a little bit and then check content aware, press OK, let Photoshop do some calculations, and then sample the edges. If it works well, that's fine. If it doesn't, I'll show you another way of doing it. So let's just hope Photoshop does a very good job. Yeah, as you can see, Photoshop did an amazing job. It tried to get it as close as it could. Again, this is just for demo purposes. I can just zoom in and randomize some of the areas. So maybe something like this. I can just paint in from different parts of the tree just to randomize it a little bit. Right, nothing too fancy. So this is more or less like the vision I had in mind when I was doing this. So I can quickly export this, maybe color grade a little bit if I want. But again, I didn't let that pipe, which was a distraction to me on set, stop me from taking this amazing image. I'm going to be retouching this image separately for you guys to see. So if you want to see that as well, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll do a dedicated video on retouching this image from start to finish. So let's move on to another image. So with this image, this is a really beautiful shot. I love the mood, I love the lighting, I love everything about it, right? But when I zoom in, I can see a few blemishes on my subject, right? I can't say that I'm not going to get rid of these because these are things that are not permanent. These things come and go. You don't see them on her face every single time, right? So you can use retouching software to get rid of some of these blemishes, and that's all I'm going to do. I'm not really going to go into frequency separation and doing all of that. I'm just going to show you how powerful it is to just use like your blemish removal tool to enhance your images. So I'm just going to be using the healing brush tool, and I'm going to be sampling and then painting just to get rid of the blemishes. So that's all I'll be doing throughout the entirety of this image. I actually have a full video on blemish removal. If you haven't seen that video, I'm going to link it somewhere here, and then you guys would see it. So to speed up and not to make this video too long, I'm just going to forward this video. All right, so zooming into the image right now, guys, you can see if I just do it before and after. So this is the before, this is how the image was looking, and after I've been able to get rid of the blemishes. This is even without frequency separation, and look at how clean the image looks already, right? This just looks like a new starting point for me to now further enhance the image, right? But if I decide not to touch it, this would be what I'm either giving to a client or giving to her herself, right? But with the retouching software, I've been able to clean up the image a little bit, and I can even go further if I want. But again, this is just a demo for you guys to see how powerful retouching tools are. All right, so I think I'm done with a few examples of what I want to show you guys in today's video, just showing you how powerful retouching tools are, and so that you guys can embrace them, use them, and not shy away from them. But before I end, I just want to see if I can even change the tone of this image. If you haven't seen the behind the scenes, I'm going to leave it right here. You can check it out. So let me just play with the color grading a little bit before I sign out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my adjustments, and I'm going to start off with the hue saturation. All right, so I'm going to go into my blues, and let me just play with the slider a little bit. You can see this is even changing the mood already. It's adding a little bit more of like a green tint to the blues, which I like, right? I'm going to go into the warm, so maybe yellow. Let's see what we can do with the yellow. So you can see the yellow in the back. It's also affecting her skin, adding more redness in there. I'm going to play with that a little bit, so maybe like -13. Okay, now I'm going to go into the cyans, and let's see what we can do right here as well. You can see it's affecting more of the light and less of the jeans. So you can see because of the colors in here, we can play with them and change them completely. If I do it before and after, you can see that this is adding another twist to the image. I'm going to go back into my adjustments again and go into color balance. Now I can play with the midtones, the highlights, and the shadows. I'm going to start off with the shadows, and I want to see if I can add like a tint into the shadows. So you can see I can cool it down, or I can just add more yellows into it. I think I want to cool it down a little bit, like so. I'm going to go into the reds and see what I can do extra here. Maybe still go more towards the cyan and add a little bit more green, just so it matches with the jeans tone that we gave earlier, right? I'm going to go into the midtones and aim more towards her skin. So I want to add some yellows. You can see it's adding some yellows in there, and then maybe add a little bit of magenta, just a tiny bit, and also add some reds right here. I'm going to go into the highlights, and then let's see where the highlights are. All right, so this is where the highlights are. I can just go a little bit more towards the yellow and add a bit of red, so it goes into orange. You can see I'm already going the cinematic way, right? And also maybe just play with the reds a little bit. I'm going to go back into the midtones and then just add a little bit more warmth, and yeah, something like so. Now I'm going to go into curves. I'm going to go back into adjustments, go into curves, and what I want to do here is just lift up the shadows a tiny bit, just to give it a faded look. So I'm just fading it out like that, and add a little bit of contrast, and also reduce the punch in the highlights, so something like so. All right, I'm going to go into the play and add a noise layer, and even increase the size of the noise because I want to maybe like give it a very noisy feel. So about 300%. And now we've added some noise to it, so it's changing the entire texture and feel of the image. If you don't believe me, let me just group all of these adjustments I've made, especially the color adjustments, and into a group. So here's the before and here's the after. You can see we've changed the entire mood, made it a little bit more cinematic, like something that came out of a movie scene, right? So again, if I just show you from the beginning, this is what we had. I love the coloring, it looks really good. You can decide not to color grade, but I just wanted to show you that you have more flexibility with your retouching software. So if I zoom in, the first thing I did was to remove the blemishes. I didn't even do any frequency separation or dodge and burn because this is not necessarily targeting the skin. I'm just showing you guys what you can do with your retouching software. Added a little bit of color grading, faded the blacks, reduced the highlights, added some noise, and we have a cinematic feel going on. So yeah, That's it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. If you did, leave a like, leave a comment as well, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Let me know what you thought about retouching softwares when you started your photography journey in the comments down below. I'm always in there answering questions. If you have questions, contributions, whatever, leave them down there, my friends. I'll be sure to answer them or to contribute as well. I'll catch you guys in the next video, and remember, don't ever give up.